with this piece of
You
shit
ready
did
for
to
the
this
piece of
girl?
shit?
It's long.
What happened
But
right
wait until
there?
you hear this.
Let's listen
All
to
right, on
Johnny
Saturday,
Bravo.
March 14th, the victim went to a Miami Heat basketball game with her female friend. After the game, the defendant picked her up from her friend's house and they went to his residence. At this point, it was approximately 06 hours on Sunday, March 15th. While they were at his residence, the victim stated the defendant received a text message of a screenshot of her and her friend while at the Heat game. Remember that little clip I showed where she was showing her tits, but I had to crop it so I don't get in trouble on YouTube? That's the one he's talking about. The defendant confronted her about her whereabouts as she had not disclosed. She had gone to the game with her friend. The defendant, which is Peggy, began yelling at the victim, explaining he paid for her boob job, that she was disrespectful for having her boobs out, and that those are my
Valdez
boobs. Also accusing her of
Yanales.
cheating on him. See, the asshole, he thinks because he put the tits in her,
Right
that
there.
he owns them, the asshole. The victim further elaborated this when the
Wes
defendant freaked
Watson.
out and against her will forcefully grabbed her by the neck and told her, "You stupid little bitch, that's where you were?" The
Arrested
victim
again.
could not remember if the defendant held her with one or two hands,
Johnny
but
Bravo
this
explains
caused
it the
bruising
best
to
way
her
you can
neck
do it.
area right and
You
left.
gotta
So
listen
the
to it.
asshole's so insecure about her going to the basketball game, he
He's
goes
got
and he
all the
chokes her
insights
and tells her, "You
about
little bitch, how dare you go
Wes
to a
Watson.
basketball game and show your tits." What a f***ing asshole.
Look it up in the
The defendant
description.
began to rattle and shake her by grabbing both of her arms
All the
forcefully. He
details
continued to push,
by
grab her
Johnny
by her
Bravo.
hair, and slam her on the floor. The defendant then
Just
dragged the victim
passing
by
on the
her hair on
news.
the floor and later
Breaking
pinned her
news,
up
Wes
against the
Watson
kitchen
arrested
table.
again.
He pushed and
Probably gonna
grabbed,
be stay
manhandling the
locked up
victim's
for
face,
a long
causing a
time.
scratch to the victim's right cheek. The victim stated the
Even though he
defendant
paid
forcefully pinned
150,000
her back
bond
against the table,
to another
causing her
judge from
back to
another
bend and hurt.
case.
The
The
defendant began
7-foot
yelling
giant
at
he
the victim,
attacked
"I'm going to
in
kill
the
you.
gym
I'm going to kill you and your whole
last year.
family." He continued to push the victim back down on the floor with force, picked her back up, and forcefully against her will sat the victim down in a chair. During the defendant's physical abuse towards the victim, she yelled, "Help me, get him off of me."
Johnny's
Then
reading
they state there
all the
was two
police
or three
report
other
what happened
witnesses who were present inside the residence. The
in
victim
Miami.
elaborated that nobody did anything to help her or get the defendant to stop. It should be noted the victim is approximately 5'1" and weighs 125 pounds, while the defendant is 6'1" and weighs 245
Wes
pounds.
Watson
That month
said 6'1".
is not no 6'1". He's 5'8", and he's probably 170 pounds now, though. It was at this point the victim elaborated that the defendant then grabbed her with his right hand by her hair and then slammed her head down into the kitchen table. This mother took her head and put it on the table. This caused the victim to sustain a cut to her forehead, which began bleeding profusely. The victim advised she was in a state of shock when she believed she had momentarily blacked out and lost consciousness. The victim explained her memory was fuzzy afterwards, so the mother probably gave her a concussion, the bitch. The victim advised it was then the defendant stopped beating on her and snatched her cell phone out of her hands. While holding a plate, the defendant threatened to break the plate on top of her head, told her he would grab a bottle and slash it across her face, break it on her head, and then told her he would kick her face in. And that reminds me, I've spoken to people that have worked for him. I'm not going to mention any names, and they told me
No
stories.
names.
They'd be sitting there, they're working, right, minding their own business, and he would just come and out of nowhere just kick them and be like, "Get to work, you piece of shit asshole." So this guy's a crazy. The defendant then told the victim to drink, drink, drink while forcefully pouring alcohol down her throat. It was at this point the defendant told his live-in assistant, which we know that Jose, that butler little bitch, clean her up. She doesn't stop bleeding, for which Jose cleaned her cut and then glued her forehead injury. It was also at this point the defendant gave his friend, who was another witness to the incident, the victim's cell phone. The defendant had his friend look through her text messages, photos, social media to make sure she is not cheating. The unidentified friend began instigating the defendant and his physical actions towards the victim. The third witness was the defendant's security guard, who told the victim to take accountability for her actions of wearing a shirt which exposed her breasts. So this asshole security guard is sitting there and telling her she shouldn't be going out to a basketball game showing her tits. What kind of world is this? When I have a girl and I'm with her, I want her to look as sexy as she can. So
That's
people look
right,
at me and be
Johnny.
like, "That's a lucky
Got
motherfucker."
that shit
What's wrong with these
right, Johnny.
assholes? The
Always.
defendant did not allow the victim to utilize her cell phone or to call anyone. The victim was forced by the defendant to tell her cousin she got the scratch on her cheek from derma peeling. Further, the defendant told her if the police were to have arrived at the residence, she needed to tell police she slipped on the rug at the residence. Throughout the altercation, the victim stated the defendant held her hostage and would not let her leave. The victim tried to leave the residence, but the defendant feared she would contact police, and due to being on parole, he could not allow it. The defendant continued to verbally abuse and yell at her. So about not letting her leave, listen, this sick did it with his employees too. Like the people that worked with him, they told me.
How did this guy
they weren't allowed
not
to
come
leave
out of
the
jail
house
and
at
change
all.
his
And
mentality,
he would do
man?
the same shit to them. The
He keep
victim
doing the
eventually
same
fell
shit
asleep,
before he went to
and
jail.
upon waking the next
did
day,
his
she
time.
wanted
He
to
went
leave
out.
the
He came
defendant's
out.
residence, but he would not let her
And
leave.
he's still doing his
The
shit.
defendant continued to tell the victim she could not leave because her face was messed up, and you have to stay here for more days until your face heals up. So he was trying to keep her there to heal up her face so that way nobody would see it. The defendant told her if she went home, her parents would call the police on him, and I can't go to jail. The defendant further stated, if I go to jail, something bad is going to happen to you, all your friends, and your family. The defendant further implied he would have girls jump the victim in order to ruin her reputation. The defendant further told the security guard, make sure she doesn't run, and had him stand by the door in an effort to keep the victim from leaving the residence. So that asshole security guard and Jose both took part in this shit. They should be getting charged too, those pieces of shit. Most of the following day, she elaborated the defendant had monitored her incoming text messages. He would give her the phone briefly and told her she needed to tell people she was okay and text them back. Other times, the defendant would act as if he was her and send text messages on her behalf, pretending to be her. I'm okay. I'm going to sleep. So this little bitch takes her phone, pretends to be her, and texts all the people texting her. I had a crazy ex-girlfriend that did that shit to me. This guy's out of his mind. She advised she stealthily took possession of her cell phone as it was on the table while the defendant was getting dressed.
Look at all
The
that stuff.
defendant threatened her
Officer
by telling her, if you
Valdez.
want to keep your family safe, don't call the police. While the victim was seated in a chair, he lifted the chair with such force, he dropped the victim on the floor. So he picked up the chair while she's sitting in it and smashes her down. What the? He thinks he's in the WWE, this asshole? The
Yeah, he
incident
does
of
think
physical abuse lasted
Who knows what's
approximately
going through his
40
mind?
minutes, but led into the following day. 2 days of this hell? During this time, the victim was scared and afraid of the defendant. She believed he was capable of killing her, and then as he said such to her. The victim stated the defendant does have firearms in the residence, but was unsure how many. And then they show here, wow, so it's listing all the different injuries she had. And like I said, I seen the ones on her face, but I didn't see all this shit. This mother, he's a monster. Look at this shit.
He's a
Bruises on right
5'8"
shoulder, bruise
monster.
on left shoulder, large dark bruise underneath the right breast. Yeah, he was trying to cut it out, the asshole, with his hands. Further, it's clear the defendant struck the victim against her will, causing several injuries and causing the victim to lose consciousness, forcibly striking the victim's face against the table, imprisoned the victim by both threat and violence, and confined her at his residence without letting the victim leave, threatened to hurt the victim while holding a plate, and after already committing battery against her, depriving the victim of the cell phone after snatching it from her hands and preventing the
stuff going
victim
on.
from communicating with law
Thank you,
enforcement.
Johnny Bravo, for explaining the whole thing.
Has been charged
Detail.
accordingly.
And the
So
report.
yeah, this guy, honestly, he's worse than what I thought he was. Because we always said, we see him go crazy on camera and shit, like what happens behind closed doors. But after reading this shit, I don't see him ever coming out of prison. There's no way. And I spoke to people who were at the house. There's security cameras outside. I think some of this took place out there, so who knows what the cops saw. I think there's only one in the house, but I don't know what that picked up. But yeah, this guy is a fucking monster, and I think this is the last we're gonna see of Wes Watson.